And we're live. Hey, everyone. It's Lev from Trotec Canada. Thank you, everyone, for watching from around the country and around the world. We have a very special guest today, Mr. Marcos Palomo. Did I say that properly?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. And Marcos, so you're out of Madrid, Spain?
That's correct. Yep.
Out of Madrid, Spain. Awesome. So before we kind of get into all about your business, anybody who's watching, if you have any questions, just put it up in the chat. You can always let us know where you're from. If you have any questions about Marcos's business directly, you can ask him here in the chat, or ask us any general questions you want as well about the lasers. Business questions, technical questions, we'd love to answer them. So, Marcos, if you could tell us a bit about yourself, I'm going to pull up your business here, what you guys do, where you're from, how you started, all about. How do you say the business name?
It's Roble Nogal, which means
Roble. Okay, I kept calling it Roble.
Yeah, that means Roble is oak and Nogal is walnut.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah, which are two woods that I work a fair bit with.
It sounds so much nicer.
Yeah,
it sounds exotic, doesn't it?
Roble.
So tell us a bit about yourself, Marcos.
Well, I started with this a few years back, and basically I started because I wanted. Well, I needed a desk, so I just made one for myself with a couple of leftover bits of wood that were lying around. And then I just got sort of interested in making my own cutting boards to cook with. And I guess I'm a bit obsessive. So I started accumulating machines until, my father told me that he invited me to vacate his garage with for my machines and find myself a workshop. So, yeah, once I had the workshop, I just started accumulating more machines, doing more stuff. I don't think I told you this, Lev, but I actually started off with an aquarium business.
No way.
Wow.
Yeah.
No.
So the first furniture that I built was aquarium cabinets and stands and that kind of thing. And from then I just started growing. I've always preferred working with solid wood, and I think fortunately for me, at the time I started doing this, people were starting to get a little bit tired of this whole crazy cheap IKEA style furniture. That the novelty of that has, I think, started to wear off. And so since a lot of people specialize in that sort of work, then there wasn't a lot of woodworking people still making stuff with solid wood. Mm-hmm. So that's basically my niche at the moment.
Marcos, if you could put your camera, like your laptop, a little bit down, I think we're getting glare from the back. People are saying they can't see your face there.
Oh, I thought that made me look mysterious. Yeah, I think it's more because there's a ton of light behind me.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's better. So I think a lot of people are wondering. You don't have the standard Spanish accent. It sounds more British. Tell us where you have the accent from.
Yeah, well, when I was born in Santander in the north of Madrid, and when I was about 3 or 4, my dad was relocated to London, so that's where I grew up and where I picked up this accent.
Perfect. And can you tell us how many machines, how many Trotec machines, non-Trotec machines, like what do you guys have over there?
Well, I'll start off with the non-Trotec machines.
Sure.
Basically, it's the traditional woodworking machines like a circular saw, planer thicknesser, wide belt sander, all that kind of stuff. And then I've got a 5-axis CNC, which is pretty cool. And then Trotec wise, I have a Speedy 400, which was my first machine. And then I moved on to a Speed Marker, which actually you can see in the background in the video there. Mm-hmm. There you go.
1300.
1300, yeah. Which I don't use to engrave rifles with Mike, although I saw your video. And then I just recently grew on to the SP3000. So those are the 3 Trotec I have. Yeah.
So,
wow, good.
each machine for? I mean, they're quite different. With is it a fiber laser, the 1300?
It's a MOPA fiber.
It's a MOPA.
Yeah.
And what do you use the machines for?
Well,
each machine, would you say?
Yeah, well, the Speedy, when people come around and they ask me what they do and the differences, I tell them, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I tell them that the Speedy and the SP are similar kind of machines, and that the Speedy is really an engraver which can cut, and the SP is a cutter which can engrave. So I mainly use the Speedy 400 for engraving, because it's faster than the SP for engraving, of course, and I get nice detail from it. And I do a lot of cutting as well with the Speedy 400, but most of the cutting I do with the SP 3000. And then with the Speed Marker, basically I engrave knives, stainless stuff, some badges, that kind of thing, because I, as you can see in the video, I'm making a cutting board there. A lot of my customer base are chefs and in the restaurant business. Oh. So obviously when I tell them that I can engrave their knives with their logos in colors, they go, wow. So that's basically the main use I have right now for the Speed Marker.
Oh, so you're actually using the MOPA to mark colors on the knives themselves.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That blows people away. People aren't used to seeing an engraving in color. And obviously, the majority of the engraving that I do with the Speed Marker is just annealing, a kind of dark annealing, or blast the hell out of it to really sort of toast the metal and get it dark. But then also do a lot of color engraving, and that's obviously what amazes people most.
Can we just? And that's pretty slow, right? How slow? How is it slow for you? Like people will pay you the money?
For the knife engraving. That kind of thing. Yeah. To be honest, I do charge for that kind of stuff, but I often sort of use that as a sort of to hook customers, And if you do this, I'll engrave your knives for you as well. And they say, oh yeah, then I'll go for it, because obviously you guys are obviously used to this, but I always knew, and now I'm really discovering that people go crazy, and I'm me for starters, with anything that's customized and personalized, and you have your name on it and your logo on it. And, for me, that has definitely been, that definitely is one of the defining factors in getting business. I very often talk to customers, and they may be more or less interested in what I do and keen on purchasing a product. But what really tips them over the edge is when you say, look, I can put your logo on there, I can put your name on there, and then they just, yeah, I want it. That's it.
Very interesting.
I'm actually obsessed with cutting boards. I love
you
them.
Are?
And so I'm in awe. I'm almost not listening. I'm watching the process. I'm also a sort of an amateur woodworker, so I'm really enjoying this video.
It's like I can't take my eyes off it.
I know. I'm.
Who does your videos, Marcos?
I just wish that I had all that stuff.
Yeah, I know. It's I mean, anyone who does woodworking, when they see my shop, they go, wow. And it's a lot of wood porn kind of thing.
Exactly.
And Lev, you were saying this video that we're watching now, for example, I filmed that myself just with a camera on a tripod. And the previous one with the cutting board, because if you see this, is just still shots on the tripod.
Yeah.
Where the previous one was on, moving shots with stabilizers and so on. And my girlfriend records those for me. She's really good at recording and editing and all that kind of stuff that I don't usually have time for.
Lev's looking for a job, Marcos says.
Yeah. He told me he looked for kids.
Yeah, I would want to move to Spain for sure.
He worked for this small laser company before. You might have heard of him.
Yeah.
I was curious, how do you find that sort of, I mean, perhaps this is an oversimplification, but like what you do, it seems to me, has sort of a traditional air about it, like working with solid wood and kind of classic woodworking. Mm-hmm. How do you find that sort of what you do as like in your workshop complements having to do these sort of like social media and this sort of advertising for the business? Like, does it feel ever at odds, or is this the sort of thing that somebody who's looking for, like, do you feel like this is where your customers are coming from partially, is like through videos like these?
Well, recently I would say that is definitely the case. Up until very recently, Lev can tell you, I'm kind of reluctant to show too much of what I do and how I do it and reveal all these details. But at the end of the day, I think that, for example, the video we saw before with the cutting board, that there's nothing new under the sun. That there are dozens of videos of people doing that. And so there's no real secrets there. It's just, I think, when people see these videos that I made, then they realize that I'm not just some guy in his basement making, cutting board a month, but that, they see the machinery there is, the potential there is, for making things on a larger scale. And that definitely helps business. And in the case of cutting boards, most definitely. I mean, I've basically until, I don't know, well, really until before this COVID nonsense, I was pretty much ignoring my social media because I didn't really have time for it. I had plenty to do without it. But, with the lockdowns, I had plenty of time to take care of that stuff. So I started trying to boost the business on social networks. And, it's definitely, it's worked. You can see that there's this whole host of, like in everything, there are these sort of subcultures of interests and people who are into different things, and they all know each other. So there's this on Instagram, there's this collective of people who cook at home, people who review restaurants, and they all know each other. So basically, once you get in there and you start promoting, and then word of mouth, and the social networks have definitely played a key role in that.
Absolutely. I always just think about the small businesses who have perhaps one laser and would aspire to, be a business like yours one day that might be watching. And I always think you're exactly right that, like, for people like James, right, who have an interest in woodworking and cutting boards and stuff, and would be willing to pay possibly a premium for something that is a specialized, like, I loved on your website where you mentioned about wanting to have sort of the quality or the feeling of working with an industrial strength company, but with the sort of personal touch of an artisan, right? Of like a personal person. I think like this video really sells that message, right? You can see the quality. Yeah. You can also see that it's you who's making them.
Yeah. The shocking thing Marcos told me was, I asked him, I'm like, that's a huge place. How many people do you have working for you? And he said, well, I'm the only one, which is
my girlfriend helps me shoot videos sometimes.
She helps me with a bunch of stuff. She's great. But yeah, basically human beings working there, it's basically me. And, wow. But it's kind of cheating because these sorts of machines, they just, they do a whole lot of work for you. And, with the lasers and with the CNC, I'm often doing something else while they're making something. Obviously, you have to program it and keep an eye on them. But it's that you can get a lot done with these sorts of machines.
Right. Yeah, I think it's amazing, too, when you watch this. And I mean, I come from the industry of selling wood plaques and everything like that. And just how much work goes into making stuff, and everybody just thinks, oh, I got a desk and you stick it on a CNC and it's done. But you watch all the steps that are going in here, all the clamps, all the gluing, all the sanding, everything like people just like, it's a work of art. And I mean, that's the, part of the problem we've lost, I think, in the world to a certain degree is that love of wood. We seem to have fallen into this love of plastic and foils and things like that, but you look at this stuff here and it's just beautiful. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, I agree that people have fallen in love with more modern and simple materials. But as I was saying, I do think it's starting to bounce back a little bit. I'm sometimes surprised when I get an inquiry for a dining table and I talk to the customer and it's a young couple in their first home who are interested in and hoping to commission a really nice solid wood table that they realize is going to last essentially for their lifetimes, which is precisely the kind of customer that you would think would just pop over to wherever and buy low-cost furniture, which is definitely very frequent, but it's becoming more and more common for people to be interested in proper wood furniture.
Mm-hmm.
And how, go ahead, James. Sorry.
Well, I'm just really curious. Like your equipment looks really good. Like I don't see a brand name on any of this stuff, but I just from looking at it, I'm assuming you're not buying, you know, the cheapest price equipment here. Can you talk a little bit about the woodworking equipment that you're using here? Like,
Sure.
Why you choose like high quality stuff? I can tell it's high quality stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and that's basically the reason that I went for Trotec. You know, when I started with this, started growing with this business, obviously my first concern was getting the cheapest possible machines, and I made that mistake once of buying a really cheap, low quality. It was a router table, and it was just really rough. I ended up giving it to a friend who does his projects, weekend projects. But you know, for the kind of thing that I do, well, not so much the kind of thing that I do, but I think I'm very fussy with the results of what I do. Like, for example, the company that sharpens all my tools and my bits and my blades and so on, I have this sort of reputation of being really, I kind of expect the precision and perfection that you don't really need in woodworking. You do in metalworking, but not so much in woodworking. So basically, going back to your question, James, the thing is, after having learned this lesson that fortunately was pretty cheap because it wasn't a very expensive machine that I bought, I always try to get the best machines possible. And if I have to save up and wait and not buy them yet, then I'll do that. And I'll try and find work to pay for the machines and to justify. Justify is a very loose term because I have a tendency to very easily justify needing a new machine.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically, I would rather save up and go for a good machine, and that's the reason that I went with Trotec. I mean, the Trotec machines have been sort of my more recent acquisitions, and by the time I got those, I had learned the lesson that I would personally much rather have a high quality machine. And as always, I started off. I was driving down to the coast, and I was going in the car. I could get a laser. I mean, it would be a good thing. I think, I've been looking into these Chinese machines. I think, I don't know, but maybe for about 5,000, I can get something straightforward. And then I ended up buying the Speedy 400. So, that's, which, if my girlfriend who was listening to me was saying, yeah, fine, you're going to buy the Austrian one, aren't you? So that's true. And with woodworking machines, basically for the classic machines, James, I have Felder, which is an Austrian brand.
I saw that. Yeah,
it's nice.
Felder's nice machine.
Yeah, and then for my edge sander and my wide belt sander, those are Kundig, which is a Swiss brand that specializes in sanding machines. They only do sanding machines, and I like about them also that they're a small enough company that you deal with them very directly and they listen to you very directly, but large enough and specialized enough that they make really, really good machines. And then the CNC is an SEM, which is an Italian brand, which is another classic brand.
Yeah. Marcos, and I saw you sealing, you laser engraved and then sealed after. Do you do laser engraving and then stain, or are you just working just with sealer typically?
I don't stain, Mike. I try to avoid staining because it introduces you to a whole host of problems and issues, and people will say dark honey color. What is dark? And then you show it to them. Oh, I thought it was going to be lighter than this, and then stain rubs off. And it's something that when I've been to North America, it's a lot more frequent. I think it's because you guys have such a vast amount of good wood that you sort of take it for granted and stay in it. And that's cool, but in Spain, these really nice Canadian maple or American oak is not as common. So I generally try to avoid staining, and I use clear finishes, whether it's oil or varnish, usually clear.
I guess when we used to manufacture the plaques, sometimes we laser etch and then we use the stain just to make that background darker. We'd stain and then we'd sand off the top, and then just have that black, color inside the laser engraving, right? So that's sometimes where we use the stain. So
I do that sort of thing, or the opposite as well, with paint or lacquer. For example, now I have to do a sign for a shop that's opening, and I have to laser engrave, sort of a deep engrave with a Speedy 400, and then I'll paint that white. and sand off the paint so that the actual sign is sort of in 3D but in white.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm actually seeing some acrylic here. What percentage would you do wood versus other non-wood products and combine them with wood, like these ones, for example?
I'm not sure in terms of percentage. The vast majority is solid wood, but I always try to, where possible, steer customers to to unique things that if I'm not doing it for them, it's going to be tough for them to find someone to do it. For example, these things that you're showing now, Lev, those are combination of UV printing, CNC, and laser. So that's the sort of thing that if a customer likes that, if I'm not doing it for them, then they're going to have a hard time finding someone else to do it for them, because it's uncommon to find someone who has laser and woodworking and CNC and UV printing. So that's the kind of thing that I try to do.
That makes me, actually, that leads me to a question I want to ask you. Is you were sort of talking about the different machines you had and how easy it was to justify a machine, but at the same time how they can be sort of complementary. And so I'm curious if it's more often that you're buying a new machine because you already have a way for it to be complementary to the others you have in mind, or if it's just like, well, a laser would be cool, and I'm sure I can find some use for it in the shop, or
like chicken or the egg kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
I try to have a use for the machine before I buy it, but sometimes it's a very sort of hard to defend reason. I have to print one single thing, so that justifies buying a UV printer that can print everything. Yeah. But definitely in the case of the lasers with the Speedy, which was the first one that I got, I knew that was going to be very useful, and I was going to use it just about on a daily basis, because I already had the experience of customers ordering things and asking for some sort of customization or engraving that I couldn't do with a CNC, because with a CNC, if someone, for example, the Trotec logo, if you have to CNC that on a huge piece of wood, that's fine. But if it's a smaller piece of wood, like a cutting board, or if it's a more detailed logo, you can't really do that with a CNC. Sometimes people think that you can have either CNC or laser, and that they substitute each other, but they don't. They definitely complement each other. Each machine has its strengths. So with the laser, I knew I was going to have to use it, because I already had to outsource laser engraving on some of my pieces that customers ordered for me.
Right.
And how did you? How did you even hear about lasers in the first place? Like, can you remember? If most of the stuff you had is woodworking technology, where did you hear about lasers?
Well, I'm not too sure where I heard about lasers in the first time, because it's something that I think that I've always been aware of, though obviously I heard of it at some point. And it was quite a few years ago, because customers, they said, can you engrave this or our logo or the customer's logo on these pieces, serving platters? And obviously I'd seen that was possible, but I knew it wasn't CNC. And I guess I came to the realization that it was laser, and started working with a couple of places in Madrid who had lasers. And another big reason for buying I know, look at that guy. We didn't even need the forklift. We basically
that's a 3,000 coming in.
Yeah.
Wow.
Lost my train of thought there. Don't know what I was saying.
That's right.
Where you heard from lasers? I was asking.
Yeah.
Where you heard about lasers? Sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, I had been outsourcing that, and another thing that frustrates me a lot is having to outsource things and losing that control of the process. And because one of the reasons is that, as I was saying, I'm kind of fussy about the finish and how I want things to be. And when you're outsourcing things, people are obviously not going to be as concerned with that as you are. So I soon grow frustrated when I tell someone to engrave something. And obviously I didn't know about lasers, so now I know why, obviously. But before I just thought, this engraving's no good. And now I know that it's because they did it at 150 DPI and it took 10 seconds to engrave, whereas I don't mind taking 2 minutes to engrave at 600 DPI, and so that it looks more detailed and crisp. So the frustration with that kind of thing has also been a reason for looking at new machines.
And in a shameless self promotion, why did you specifically choose Trotec?
Well, there's a very specific reason actually, and as I was saying, the whole idea of actually just going ahead and looking into lasers was something that I thought of on a Friday, driving down to the coast for a weekend. And then, so I spent the weekend basically just going online, looking for machines and seeing what brands there were. And it was very clear from the get-go that Trotec was one of the biggest, if not the biggest or most important, most versatile company for lasers in general. And also, I have to say, largely thanks to you guys and your videos, because I went on YouTube and looked for Trotec, and I saw you guys. Oh yeah, definitely.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, so I sent an info request to Trotec in Spain, and on the Monday when I was driving back from the coast, which is about a 4-hour drive, the sales guy Albert, who's the best salesperson I've ever dealt with all my machines, he basically, if it was 4 hours drive, he must have spent 2 hours on the phone with me, answering all my questions and asking what kind of samples I might want done and blah blah blah. And I told him, I don't know, I'm looking at Chinese machines. I'm thinking of spending 5,000-6,000 euros maybe. And he very expertly said, "Oh yeah, you could do that, or you could get a better machine." And basically, he was the reason. I was between Trotec and another brand, and I had no idea about lasers back then. Now I know I made the right decision, but back then I had no idea. And basically, the reason I went for Trotec is because the service that I was getting from Trotec Spain. They were calling me, taking care of me, doing samples and demos. And I just thought, this is not like woodworking and CNC that I have a very big knowledge of at this stage. And that if I buy a machine, I have no service, I'm okay with it. Laser is something new to me. So I really feel that having the support, having these guys behind me to support me when I have questions and doubts is really going to be helpful. So basically that, plus I thought the machines were among the best machines out there, was the reason that I went for Trotec.
Doesn't that sound like a commercial that we commissioned? Like that long, beautiful Spanish coastline dreaming of laser.
I could never have written that.
Yeah, maybe we should
videos
maybe we should do a video shoot.
That's right. Yeah, we should go out there and shoot a video.
Yeah,
I was going to say,
which coast is
Lev,
that?
you've got to go on site to do a video.
Yeah, exactly. Is that Costa del Sol, or where is that?
It was in Murcia in the south.
Oh, cool. Very cool. And Andalusia?
Not exactly Andalusia. Close to Andalusia. Murcia is a very unique region. It's not
Spain.
Andalusia, it's Murcia.
Yeah, Spain is my favorite country to visit. So I've been there lots of times. Love that country. Beautiful, beautiful place. I always say you could go there every year for the rest of your life, and you won't see a half of it. So awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
It's bizarre because it's a country that's relatively small, but the geography, the climate, the cuisine is pretty diverse for a country that's not that huge, especially when you compare it to Canada, for example.
Yeah, you could drive for a good 17 hours and the scenery won't change.
Exactly.
British Columbia is actually a lot like that, where you drive for 3 hours and you've gone through, coastal mountains, big rocky mountains, and then suddenly desert.
Yeah, you got desert over there.
Yeah, so it's
the only desert in Canada, I think.
I think that's where Alberta starts, isn't it? Sorry, guys. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, Mel isn't here to defend it.
Sorry.
Anyway, some Canadian humor. Sorry, Nicole, our longtime viewer from Florida. Hi, Marcos. Very lovely design. What's your favorite item you've made recently?
It's a good question. My favorite item, in terms
a tougher
of
one than it sounds, I feel like probably.
Yeah, I mean, whenever someone asks me for anything favorite, it's tricky. I could maybe pick a top three, but a favorite, I don't know. Basically, I like anything that really features a nice customer's logo. That always looks great because it's like when you're doing photography. You can be an excellent photographer, but if the subject is kind of average, then the photo is not going to be very appealing. And whereas if you have an insanely gorgeous subject, whether it's a model or a meal or whatever, or nature, then half your work is done. So anything that has good artwork just, looks great. And recently, I try in general to think of things and produce things that are unique and hard to copy, because I don't enjoy competing in price. And I think that competing in price is a very respectable thing to do, and it's a strategy you can have. But obviously, I would imagine that that's not something that that Trotec would do. You compete in quality and customer service. That's your main thing, and that I try to compete in quality, customer service, and unique things. Like if I create something that's very unique and that combines different technologies that I know for a fact that someone else is going to have a hard time replicating, then that's easier to sell. I don't feel that I need to say, oh, I can do it for 10 euros less. I can do it. I can just say, this is it. This is how cool it is. It's a fair price. It's up to you. So any sort of product where you can really be proud of what you've achieved and the look of the product and not have to argue about the price is something that I enjoy making.
And show off those natural materials, I imagine, as well. Something that's really going to let the wood sort of shine through and be a star of the piece.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, Marcus.
No, I was just going to say that for me, I know a lot of other laser businesses, and I see a difference between the kind of stuff that they have to offer, the kind of stuff that I have to offer, simply because before I put things in the laser machine, I can already have done a lot of processes to them. So I produce a very unique piece of wood with shapes and blah, 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 and then I put it in the laser machine. So, that's a big advantage before I even put it in the laser machine.
Absolutely.
You were saying
what's the name of the sales guy in Madrid you were saying?
Albert Rayo.
Alberto.
Yeah. No, Albert. So yeah, we have a comment here from Jason that hasn't met James yet.
Yeah. Well, I've met him over the internet. He seems I don't know, but he seems to be sort of like the maverick of Trotec and trying out crazy things.
Who, James or Albert?
James.
Oh, James.
Yes.
Oh, you haven't met Mike though.
Yeah, Mike. I've always had the feeling that he's sort of like the go-to guy for proper sound advice.
He's the godfather of
Mr. Miyagi.
of engraving.
Yeah.
Mel, by the way, is out of commission today, unfortunately, but he is commenting, so he could speak Spanish, so he wants to do the video in Spain. But he had a good question though. What's the most expensive complex project you've done combining both technologies, router and laser?
Again, I have to think long and hard what the most expensive or complex one is. But basically, anything that combines, for example, as I was saying, I work a lot with chefs in the restaurant industry, and there's a couple of places that I make furniture for, and basically, since I have my own laser machines, instead of being able to offer little tiny things that I know other people can do for me, I can just go crazy and invent whatever I want. And if it's completely mental and it's going to take 3 hours of going crazy with a machine, well, that's my problem. So I can, for example, that sort of table, I have created for this restaurant really big solid wood tables that I then put onto the SP3000 and engrave a huge logo on. Or I cut out something with a CNC, and then I make a big acrylic, engraved or UV printed piece of acrylic that's laser cut and then encased into the wood. So that sort of combination, again, is the kind of thing that it's tricky to find other people who can do it for you.
Definitely. I have a question from Alejandra. Among all the lasers you have, which one is your favorite and why?
Well, that's difficult. Depends on the day, really, because basically, since I buy machines that I think are really good machines and that I know that I'm going to enjoy using and that I'm proud to own and that work really well and give great results, basically, whatever machine I'm using that day, I'm thinking, wow, this is the best machine. You know, like when I'm engraving a really nice logo on the Speedy and I look at it and how detailed it is, and you know, they're just these little things like now it's normal to me, but when I do these cutting boards and I engrave a customer's name or logo, it still kind of amazes me the level of detail that you can get with a Speedy 400. And that, for example, if you engrave Roble Nogal, my name, you know, the interior of the O, which is going to be a piece of wood standing there. I used to be really scared that that's just going to fly off and fall off, but it doesn't. You know, you can get this insane level of detail. And for example, that's something that's unthinkable with CNC. You know, CNC, you have to be really careful because, you know, blades and router bits, they're aggressive and they're sort of ripping off wood. So you have to hold the wood down. You have to be really mindful of how the grain is going. And with laser, you just dump it on the laser and press play, and it's a lot easier. So I like using the Speedy 400 for engraving logos. When I cut thick acrylic on the SP 3000, I look at the finish you get. It still amazes me. And obviously when you engrave something in colors with the Mopa on the speed marker, you know, that's amazing. Whenever a customer sends me a logo that's sort of like pure colors, I think, oh, I can engrave this on the Mopa. So I'll just find, you know, a spare piece of stainless, engrave it and show it to them, and people say, wow, I need that.
So cool.
Yeah, actually, Amy Hill, also our longtime viewer, a customer from the UK. Question for Marco: can you give any advice for a startup business? Don, do you remember what laser Amy has? I think it was a Rayjet or
the Rayjet. Yeah,
it was a Rayjet. Yeah, Marco, how long have you been in business? And I mean, if you remember your kind of startup phase, what kind of advice would you give for starting businesses?
Well, that's a question for a whole webinar, I think. But, yeah, but basically, a couple of things that come to mind is to be realistic, and then when you think you're being realistic, be a little tone it down a bit, because usually when we think we're being realistic, we're usually being optimistic, and you know, manage your expectations. Try to keep it simple in the beginning, but above anything else. Try to think what you're bringing to the market or to the customers. You know, why people would buy from you. What are you doing that would make people want to buy your product? Because as I was saying, there's plenty of strategies you can use. You know, you can start a business by creating something new that nobody else creates, and you know, that's your unique sales proposition. That's why people will buy from you. Or you can create something that already exists, but there's a huge demand for, and you're just going to make it cheaper. Or you realize that people are frustrated with long lead times because they order things from China. But if you do it on your Rayjet, you can produce things in 24 hours. So that gives you the edge. Or as is my case, for example, I just try to find really unique things that that justify a sort of a higher price, and look for customers that they're in that price range. And then I think another thing that's very important is to be realistic about your customers. Like, for example, ages ago, I learned that it was pointless to try to convince a customer who's saying, look, why would I buy your table when I can buy this one in IKEA for 20 euros? Mm. That's a conversation that's not worth having. I'll say, you should buy that table. You know, it's a very good price. Go for it. You know, I think it's better to spend my time looking for customers who you tell them the price of a solid wood table, a bespoke made to measure solid wood table, and they go, yeah, I can pay that. So
I hear this. It's the same in any industry. Like you look for the customers who match your product and your service level. And if people are still asking you, well, why should I want your service, and why should I want to pay so much for your product? Well, then you're spinning your wheels trying to convince them that they should, when really you should be, you know, walking down the hall, and the next person is going to be appreciating that.
Yeah, I mean, the market's very big. Advice. There's space for everyone, and I don't think it's worth, like, for example, when another thing that I stopped doing, thankfully I don't need to do that kind of stuff anymore, is when people say, can you install a door for me in my house? Can you lay the floor in my living room? I used to think, oh, it's work, I can't say no. But now I've realized that, you know, there's plenty of guys who are specialized in that, who are going to do it 100 times faster and better than I am. And my energy is much better devoted to looking for customers who want the kind of stuff that I do. Plus, if you end up doing stuff that you're not really specialized in, you're not going to shine with. It's not infrequent to end up disappointing customers. So you disappoint the customers, you end up stressing yourself, and you're not even really making money. So I think it's better to just decide what you should be doing and how you should be doing it and why. Whether it's because you've decided that this is your product and it's different, or because you've realized that there's a huge demand and not enough offer. But that once you've decided, you go for that. Obviously, you can adapt. You can analyze what's going on and adapt. But pick your battles and not try to just do everything and not. In Spanish, there's an expression which is aprendiz de mucho, maestro de nada, which means apprentice of many things, master of nothing.
Master of nothing, yes.
Yeah, we have a similar
knower of all, doer of nothing.
Jack of all trades, master of none kind of thing.
Yeah. So I don't know. That would be my advice.
That guy was in marketing, I think. So.
We got to make fun of Mike's age and about we have 20 minutes to go.
Hey, Lev, I have a question for Marcos, and hopefully, I don't think we've ever asked this question, but it just came to me, so I'm going to ask Marcos, and he doesn't have to answer it if he doesn't want to. But it is a question that we get asked a lot, and I know Marcos has a lot of equipment. Do you buy or do you lease machines, and why do you do either one of those?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because you do have a lot of great equipment there, and it's expensive. So right?
Very expensive. And I don't mind answering that at all, Mike. Basically, again, obviously our experiences shape the way we see things, and I realize that my opinion is very tainted by my experiences. But in the same way that when I bought that really cheap Chinese router table and just threw it away after 3 days, another waking up experience and learning process for me was when I was 20 something, I guess, and I decided I wanted a new car, even though there was a secondhand car in the house that I could use, and it was perfectly fine. So I just went ahead and bought it. I didn't have a really stable income. I didn't really need to buy the car, but I went ahead and bought it, talked myself into it, and agreed to paying a monthly fee that I couldn't really deal with if I lost my job. So things went south. I lost my job. And sure enough, the car became a problem. And due to that, I'm not saying it's wrong to lease machines, but due to that, I would much rather save up and just buy the machines, and if it takes me longer, then I'll do that, than signing up to something that I'm not sure I'm going to be able to pay for. Except, of course, with, I should say this in all honesty, with the SB3000, Trotec made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And, since, I feel kind of part of the Trotec family in Spain, and, they know my business. They're confident that I'm doing okay and I was going to be able to pay the machine. So they made me a good offer, and they said, look, you could wait a year to save up for the machine, or you could just get it now and start using it, start making money that'll help you pay for the machine. And, that was the one exception in my recent acquisitions. Other than that, I try to drum up business, save up, and buy the machines in a way that I don't, wake up on the first of every month and think, okay, I need 9,000 euros just to pay for, the machines. I like the idea, having learned that lesson with the car I bought, I like the idea of waking up the first of each month and having a manageable level of income that's needed just to pay for debts.
Thank you.
And so just to get one thing straight, so you do all the sales for your business, the marketing, like trying to go after clients. I mean, you do all that in addition to all the actual production work that you do. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's why my hair's going gray.
I was going to ask, when do you sleep then?
Yeah, it's tricky. And one thing that I've learned, probably too late, but I have learned, is that my time is a valuable resource. So I try to dedicate my time exclusively to things to which I add value, and things that are just just taking up my time for no good reason. I try to get other people to do for me, because it comes to a stage where I want to do everything myself, but you can't manage, you can't cope. So, a few years ago, if you would ask me, this house needs painting, are you going to paint it? Yeah, of course. I'm not going to pay anyone to paint my house. And that was fine back then. But right now, for example, I just really do not have the time to paint my house. So if I had to paint my house, I would just pay someone to do it, no doubt, because fortunately,
it's more valuable for your time.
More valuable for me to go out and look for customers, or to do my accounting, or to post a video on YouTube, or whatever. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Very interesting. We have a couple. I'm just going to go through a couple of priority questions, because we didn't really get to them in a couple of weeks. So I want to ask, and I definitely want Marcos involved in a few of these. This is from Linda from Ventura, California. When should I use a grid table, and when should I use a slat table? You guys could also, Mike and James. I mean, when would you say for these two guys?
Well, I guess if you, depending on what you're cutting, I think, like if you're doing a lot of small pieces, typically the grid table would be better than the slat table, because you've got more space between the supporting structure of the underlying table itself. Right. And that's typically would dictate, whether somebody uses a grid table or a slat table. The other issue, if you're cutting acrylic, is that you want less surface area for that beam to hit and then bounce back and sort of, reburn the backside of your materials. So that's typically why a slat table is used. And then with the slat table, you don't need to use metal slats, you can use acrylic slats. So any of that energy that's coming through is absorbed by the acrylic slat. So, a lot of times the grid table versus the slat table is dependent on the material that you're working with, and the size of the images that you want to make. That's sort of where, I would sort of tell people to sort of choose which one they were going to use. So.
Yeah. Can I add something to that, Mike?
Yep, sure can.
Because I obviously agree with everything you've said, and the problem that I had was that with a slat table, which I'm sure that's is something that people come across. I use the acrylic slat table on the SB3000 to cut my acrylic, so I don't get the reflections. And the trouble I had was that sometimes when I was making small pieces, the gap between the slats was too big, so I had the problem of more pieces just tilting and not falling down and catching with a head. So I can send you guys a photo. It's very straightforward, but basically what I did was with the SB3000, sort of machined a grid table out of sort of a hybrid. So I made the slats, and then I cut a recess, and then I put cross pieces. So I have on the SB3000, in one of the sections where I cut small pieces, I have a slat table with 90 other pieces of acrylic in 90 degrees. So then I can cut small.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So because you don't necessarily have to settle for the compromises of each system. Yeah,
and I know that sometimes, Austria is, I remember Josephine getting those pieces from Austria where they were small pieces of acrylic, which would raise, you could put them on a grid table and you could raise your material off the grid table a little bit. And again, that helped, that gave you a couple of things, is that the problem with the grid table sometimes is you lose sometimes that laminar flow at the top, where you're not drawing that vapor down with the acrylic, and that allowed the air to run underneath the table when you were cutting, and it got everything off and you didn't get that diffusion back too. So you're right. I mean, what Marcos has done is he's a lot more creative than me.
Well, I've got a lot more machines, basically.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's another thing that I make a really good use is making jigs with the CNC for stuff that I engrave on the laser, and vice versa. That's something that's insanely useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, you've got the best of both worlds there. That's for sure. So.
I was going to say,
what software? I was going to ask Margaret, what software are you using? Like, I know you're using your CNC software, but what are you using to run the laser equipment?
Well, I use AutoCAD, Illustrator, and CorelDRAW.
Depending on all three, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I've always known more Illustrator, but I find, well, Trotec told me this, and I agree now, that Corel works a little bit better for laser. But I'm used to using Illustrator, and my furniture, I usually draw it up in AutoCAD because each software has its pros and cons. So I'm very often creating things in one program, exporting and opening in the other one, and printing from Corel.
Do you find that the experience you have working with the Speedy, does that experience transfer to the other lasers as you've gotten more? Like, did the experience you have with the Speedy help you, use the 3000, which then comes back to the Speedy and that sort of thing? Or
definitely, because basically the SP is the big brother of the Speedy, with a few different things, but it's a similar machine. Obviously, this experience wasn't very useful with it was a bit useful, but not too useful with the Speedmar, because that's a whole different world.
Yes,
that's a different world. Yeah,
duration and frequency, and it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely when you know how to use one of the machines, that really helps with the next one. And they're not complicated machines. Anyone who's even slightly tech savvy will be fine learning to use these machines.
Actually, I was going to bring up this. So this was UV printed, right? Like, this is from your website.
Yeah. See, that's an example of something that has CNC, laser engraving, and the UV printing, and then varnished.
And then you
varnished,
which UV printer do you have?
It's a Mimaki.
It's a Mimaki, and you were telling me like you actually got that Mimaki from watching our Mimaki videos, right?
Yeah. I saw you guys doing something. I thought, what? That is so cool. And then because I saw one of the, going back to, I don't know, Nicole, I think asked what my favorite piece was. Anything that I do that I print on the UV printer, and then using the registration marks, I cut on the laser using the vision, the camera. That's always amazing. The fact that I've got a video, I don't think it's on that Instagram, I'll send it to you guys, but just, I printed these sheets of A3 paper, and in between the photos that I needed to cut out these little register marks, and I didn't think to leave any sort of margin around the photos or anything. I just printed them as is. And then when I put them in the laser and press play, I thought, it's not going to be that precise. I should have left a bit of margin around them, because it's not going to cut exactly against the line, and it cuts exactly down the line. I've got this video where I lift off the XS, and you can see that the XS has 0 ink on it, and the printed images have 0 white on them. So the anything that you print and then throw on the machine and use the camera, the job control vision, it still baffles me at how precise that is.
Yeah, so you had no bleed at all on it.
Sorry?
I just gotta say, you had no bleed at all on the image.
No.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
When I first used the Vision camera, I couldn't wait. I was so excited. I was really excited. I was like, this is a dream for me. I always wanted to do this. And then I turn it on, and I put the reg marks on, and I hit go, and it reads it and it cuts it, and I'm like, oh, that's all? It just works? Like, it wasn't. It was so easy. It wasn't even cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things that when I had to do it for the first time, I was a bit daunted and thinking, I'm sure this is going to be the kind of thing that I have to adjust, and it's not going to work the first time, blah, 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 blah. But it's just all sort of like, okay, so, this, and cut out a piece of paper, and then blah, blah, it works. It's really straightforward.
Yeah, we have Nicole asking if you can start your own podcast.
I would really enjoy that. I wish I had time for it.
Just a woodworking podcast, just talk about wood burning and all that stuff.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah.
I got a couple of more questions from the priority queue. Danielle from Niagara Falls. I heard on Facebook that there's a new version of Job Control that has been released to beta testers. What's new and exciting about it? So it's not actually going to be Job Control. It's going to be called something else. I'm not sure if I can disclose any of what's this called in the meantime, but it will be It will be a web-based software like Job Control. So it will be available, obviously, to all Mac users. I don't know, Mike, James, can you guys kind of mention what's going to be the cool new things? Because I know a lot of the people were always asking, oh, when can we get a driver for Mac? When can we get a driver for Mac? Because a lot of designers are obviously use Mac. So what can you guys mention about the new software that's just relatively, I mean, you've tested it, you've seen it. Marcos, have you actually played around with it?
I'm not sure I have. I've got a recent version of Job Control, but it is a Job Control, and it has a few improvements in it. But I'm not sure. It's not web-based, so it can't be the one that you're discussing.
No. There wasn't. I think. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
No, this software basically allows you to run out of a browser, basically, and you can do all your designing, and then through that browser, then you can basically output right to the laser system. So as long as you have a browser on your device, whether it be Mac or Windows, or I guess Linux for all intents and purposes, you should be able to output directly right to the laser machine. And you can have Job Control on the same machine. So again, there should be some good abilities where you can be in another computer, I would think. And you should be able to send a job right directly to the laser machine from another computer, and then that will basically, and the one, it's interesting because I go back, and I'm gonna deteriorate myself here, being an old guy, but it's funny because I'm looking at the software and I'm so used to files, and subfolders and subfolders and subfolders and subfolders, and this program will be running on tags, and it's amazing now, how I'm seeing myself move towards tags for when I'm saving stuff now, and that's kind of cool too. So it's really cool software. I've used it, and once it comes out, it'll be a big deal for a lot of people out there, for versatility and things like that. So.
Yeah, we're hoping to have it out by the end of the year. There's no firm date set, but just keep your eyes out for that one, guys. A few more. We have time for a couple more questions. Do you have a minimum charge to do any engraving, no matter how simple? Brian for Coquitlam. Marcos, this is a good question for you. Do you have any minimum charge? How does that work? I mean, the products are very intricate, but I guess for the smaller, like the kitchen stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Basically, what I do is I price my stuff with the materials involved, my time involved sitting on the computer, and my time using the machines. So I price, obviously, my time sitting on the computer is cheaper than my time operating the laser, but I tend to tell people that I charge at least half an hour of work, or an hour of work. And in my case, what that does is sort of filter out the people that just want to make a single keyring, because that's not really my kind of business. So I filter them out sort of that way. And in some cases, the intent is to filter them out, and then they surprise you and say, okay, well, then make 20 for me. So yeah, I personally, I don't think that's the right thing to do, but I personally, I won't, make someone a tiny little thing and say, that's 5 minutes, so that's €2. No, I'll either charge them a minimum or try to steer them towards a bigger order. But my kind of business is not the kind of business where you can just do constantly small things and that'll add up to a decent amount of money. I make bigger things, so making small things is a hassle. I know other businesses who make their living making small things. So that instead of making 3 small things a month, they'll make 20 a day. So then maybe that adds up. If you're in a place where people just stop by and you grave a pen for them, and then there's next person, another person, with that kind of business, maybe I wouldn't charge a minimum. But in my kind of business where I make big things, I do either charge a minimum or say, you should make more of these.
Yeah, funny.
It's kind of scary. I just realized. No, I was just going to say, what's kind of scary, just came into my head here is that we all charge less for human time than we do for machine time.
Yeah,
Isn't that amazing? Like I'm just sitting here realizing it now. Marcos just said that he just said it, and all of a sudden it just kind of hit me and go, why are we doing that? I mean, we're all afraid of being taken over by machines, and we're doing the job for them. I mean,
I guess we're okay while we still have to program them. Once they don't need us,
I guess, yeah. I guess. Yeah.
I mean, and then if you think about it, the machine costs are way less than your labor costs. Every single time.
Yeah.
Like every single time. Yet we charge less for when we're just a person.
Exactly. Yeah, it's amazing, eh? Funny, yeah.
It's
funny. Marcus, you're saying about the large products. Actually, one of our customers is they used to be number one on Etsy. I don't know how they are now. And they make these little tiny pins and pin backs and all that kind of stuff. And they make tons and tons of that stuff.
Yeah.
But obviously they wouldn't charge like a minimum. They just mass produce and resell them. So it's a different business model.
Yeah, that's the kind of business where if you just make tiny little things and charge whatever and make hundreds of them.
Yeah.
I want to
go ahead. Sorry.
I have to go, Lev. I have to go. So
thanks, Mike. Thanks for being part of it. We're almost done.
Thanks, Marcos. Nice meeting you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We'll just be a couple more minutes, Marcos, and we'll promise we'll let you go.
I just wanted to follow up on that sort of pricing discussion, because pricing comes up so often when we do these live streams. It's a tough question to ask, and certainly, again, you don't have to feel pressure to answer it in any detail. But because you do so much work, I assume that sort of has a bespoke element, or that is unique to each customer. Are you forced to sort of reevaluate the pricing each time, or are you able as a business to sort of say, well, I did a cutting board of just about this complexity for someone last month, so I can sort of base the time I think it will take off of that? I mean, I imagine pricing is much more difficult when each piece is bespoke and unique to the customer to some degree.
Yes, I mean, with the example of cutting boards, they're not all the same, but there are a few models, so there it's more straightforward. But if it's a table, then I have to price every single table specifically. And for example, when I make cutting boards, when customers ask me for pricing, I charge them a specific amount for customization. And my goal is, my personal strategy here is for the charge for customization to be very low, because that just gets them to buy into the product. I don't want to charge a low price for the product and then charge them 50 euros to engrave their name on it. I would much rather give them price for their product that they may think is a little bit pricey, but then they think customization is only 5-10 euros. Then yeah, sure, I'll go for it, because the people see the cutting boards, they see the nice cutting boards, but I often get the feeling that they've really decided to buy them and go for them because of the romantic idea of engraving their name or their partner's name or their logo of a friend or a message for a wedding or something.
Sure.
So I use the customization. I try to keep it cheap and to lure customers in with that.
That's very interesting. I think we're going to end it there. We're just at the top of the hour. Just to quickly answer Vivian's question about the new Trotec software, we're not 100% sure yet, and it might be different in each country. I know, Vivian, you're from Holland, so might want to check with the guys in Holland for that. But keep an eye out. We're going to have more info in the next coming months, so watch out for that. And I really want to thank you, Marcos. I think this was an awesome session. I definitely want to have you back sometime in the not so distant future. I think the advice and really the work is amazing. Check out the site. It's roblenogal.com.
Very good.
I butchered it. Can you say it properly? I butchered it.
No, you said it very well. Roblenogal.com.
Roble Nogal.
People tend to start with the R, because if you say it properly, it's a very R sound.
Roble Nogal. Check him out. Check him out on Instagram. Tell him how great his stuff is. And we'll see you guys next week. And thanks again.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, guys. Nice to meet you all.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers.